The thing that I wanted to explore is like deal with his grief efficiently.
Yeah.
What the hell kind of statement is that to begin with, right? Because it's sort of going back to this human thing of like everyone wants the best of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff, me included, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about grieving efficiently, I'm thinking about like an optimization function almost, like a mathematical whatever thing,
Yeah.
right?
2 days of
'Cause
this, 3 hours of
yeah,
this,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you're
And
done.
I'm just like, is grief supposed to be something that you optimize to have the least of? Like we want that, but like how do
Yeah.
you make that happen? And is it the right thing to do?
So I was actually thinking about you because
Ah,
I was watching Good Will Hunting again.
okay.
Um, and then it was just the first scene between Will Hunting and Robin Williams' character. I forget the
Yeah,
actor's name.
it starts with an S. Whatever. The
Sam.
doctor.
Sam. I don't know.
I call him Robin Williams. Like,
That's the thing. It's just I know him for being, yeah, his iconic character.
yeah.
I mean, not character. His being him just as the actor. But yeah, I was thinking about that because you'd showed me like how you had referenced it in one of your presentation talks that you were
Yeah,
doing a
yeah.
couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about how the bias set in for me that I'm like, oh yeah, back in the '90s, movies used to be so much more about that like internal struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you remember the first scene, they look at a painting, and
That was the first scene. I remember
the first
that
scene they
scene.
interact. That's the first time they meet. So
The one with the guy on the boat.
yeah, exactly. So the
Yeah.
first time they're like, "Oh, can you please go see Will Hunting? Can you
Yeah.
just, help him do this therapy thing?" He's like, "Okay." And yeah, they start talking, and then they do the boat scene with the painting, and then he takes the jab at like, "Oh, your wife left you," and then he just like does the yeah, and it was just that moment of and then the following meetup because that's when the psychiatrist is like, or Robin Williams is like, no, let him. I'm gonna meet with him again.
Yeah.
And then he goes there and sits next to him and kind of does this whole monologue.
That was the one in the Boston Common.
Is it? Yeah, outside. Outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dude, that's such a classic scene.
Funny enough though, because I don't know, maybe because of how we are now and the content we um consume, I felt it ran a little long. Like they got the idea across and they kept going with it, but that could just again be the impatience, which plays into my whole point. I don't know if it's a bias. Do you think the 90s or even just anything before when cinema was just starting out, there was just more focus on the self internal struggle or like I had so many like there's a lot of
Yeah,
different
no,
themes
I'm
we could.
having several thoughts right here as well.
Yeah.
So let's start off at the top where I want to actually deconstruct that scene a little more because the thing that I really like about it, obviously, Will Hunting is like the super genius guy, where you put like a psychiatrist in front of him,
Yeah.
he's going to pick the doctor apart, and like the
Yeah.
gay guy, the whatever guy, just like didn't want to deal with his
Yeah.
BS, right? But now you have Robin Williams. Did he actually pin him to the wall in that first
Yeah.
meeting? Because he like
Yeah.
says shit about his
Disrespects his
wife,
wife, yeah.
right? Okay. And it was interesting because what we find out earlier, where there was probably a sense of belonging that Will found because he was abused as a kid. Whereas like, oh, I've seen this before,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where yeah, I don't know. There's something about when people are broken in the same way, they know how to relate with each other. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's not that oh, Robin Williams abused him, so like he felt like now this is his new dad, but he could see that Robin Williams was willing to cross that line because he could lose his license for touching a patient, that to a student.
You think that's what garnered
I
some
think that
respect?
was definitely one thing that kept that relationship going. Because seeing how both of them, and later on you find out that, oh, Robin Williams was
Yeah.
also abused. So there's a sense of relating to at some level in the past. But then going back to the thing you're flagging about, oh, maybe they just took too long and like really let what's the word, where you're feeling yourself too much and not
Mhm.
really worried about the audience. I think that's what you're trying to get to some degree, where it's like if you gotten to the point, then just move on, sort of deal.
Oh, no, sorry, that was just
Whereas,
a separate thought where I found that scene dragged a little only because of how we consume, again, media now.
sure,
But sorry, my whole point of bringing it up, what really was on my mind was just, in my opinion, the scene or just the character of Robin Williams, he was a man who had lost everything, right? And
he was a man who had lost the thing he cared most about.
yeah, so it's
Not
essentially,
everything.
but from that he
It's
lost everything.
different.
She was his everything. So it, like, to me it's the same,
Okay. Okay.
right?
I'm willing to concede. Sure.
Um if yeah, the point though is that he's trying to relay this idea to Will about how love is the one thing you cannot the one thing you do not want to regret in life is losing out on that. And so I think the bigger picture of what I was trying to point out is, am I crazy to think that shows or movies or again media content revolved around what matters most in life, what really gets you happy in life is that love, that that relationship, that family, those friends, versus now, and I think of movies now and I think about where those themes are and what we're trying to what we're um what moral we're trying to take at the end of it. I don't see that come across anymore. And for you, did you even get that, I guess? Since I think that's also one of your standout movies for yourself.
Hmm. Oh, I definitely got the whole pursue the thing that you're afraid to pursue thing.
Hmm.
Like that definitely stood out. I probably wouldn't say it the way you said it, but again, like different people relate to it in a different manner.
But then what calls out to you? Yeah, tell me
Hmm.
what calls out to you.
Well, to me, the major theme was being afraid to like take that jump in because you feel like it's gonna get effed up,
Just
right?
generally.
Like, because think about it, like he was dating this girl
Hmm.
that he met at the bar with the whole "how you like them
We're
apples"
talking about Will
line.
Hunting, the main character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And then as soon as they have a fight or as soon as something got
yeah.
serious, he's
Hmm.
like, "Oh yeah, I dumped her."
Yeah, you backed out.
And then the doctor was like, "Oh, what the hell?" Like, right? Because he I guess one just didn't know how to deal healthily with the conflict
Hmm.
versus the pain was too much or whatever. I'd rather not deal with this. So why not just give up on it? So to me, like that theme always sort of hits home because always question like there's a whole like would you it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I still disagree with that to some degree, right? It depends on
Oh,
your propensity to carry on after the loss. It
how
really
well you can compose yourself or pick
exactly.
up the pieces.
Yeah.
So even the value of the love that you had is
It's
not
not worth
worth
the
the
pain.
pain.
Yeah. So it's funny because every time you listen to Lex, and he'll keep going back to this part of the love is the
Lex
pain.
Friedman.
Yeah, yeah. He always brings this up.
Okay.
It's funny to hear him sort of talk about it, but again, I think it does depend on like an individual's propensity to be willing to and able to deal with that pain.
So what does he say? He says that
So Lex,
yeah.
his whole thing is the goodbyes are just as important as the hellos and the great moments and the whatevers,
Hmm.
right? And everything has to end in order for the thing to have value to some degree. Like in that one, he said more about life,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Um,
Okay. In regards to life, I can see that. I can
yeah,
understand that.
yeah. But even like loved ones, like everything ends.
Yeah.
One of you is gonna die. Both of you are gonna die.
But does it actually end? So, I mean, in regards to love. So, for example, the love of your friends and family when they pass away,
Mm-hmm.
it maybe physically, like the relationship cannot go on,
Sure.
but you still hold that care and love for them, right? There's that famous scene in Interstellar where
The dad.
No, yeah, but I'm referring more to Anne Hathaway. She was I don't know, she was like basically touching and feeling this energy, and or actually no, maybe that's not the scene per se, but the concept, I still took away the moral well, not the moral, the concept of that scene for me is she was saying how some like things like gravity, forces like gravity, which you like exist outside or across time, so does love, right? This idea that you can be like light years away from each other
Mm-hmm.
but still have this bond with somebody and still feel some connection to them,
Yeah.
and you don't even know if they're alive or exist, and that has to play a part similar to like how gravity pulls you down. Do you remember that?
I as sort of not maybe not as well as you do, but I firstly I like what you said about like even though someone dies doesn't mean that the love has gone away.
Hmm.
But let's play this out a little more. So let's say you and I love each other, right?
Oh,
And then
yeah.
I die, and then you still continue to love the memory of me,
Hmm.
right? So there's some love,
Yeah.
but then you die. So then
Yes.
where's the love?
So I guess you're saying once both our memories of the friendship die, there's no more, the love is gone.
And this is the best case scenario.
Well, if we're not assuming any kind of like heaven or afterlife, then I guess you're right. But
I do want to
you could
cover that
say
scenario of afterlife as well, but let's just keep it no afterlife for now.
you could still say that the memory of us to other people and our friendship and how we also made others feel when our friendship made other people feel could also be an impact.
Okay, so now let's just say 50 people are aware of our
Yeah.
friendships, and then those 50 people die. What then?
Then yeah, I guess it's dead. Isn't this the literally the Mexican belief of you have to remember your ancestors because once they're forgotten, they're actually gone.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's the
if
two
you
deaths.
continue to remember them, they will live on forever.
Yes,
So you pass on the memories of
but
them
the
further
mere
and
fact
further.
is that eventually everyone dies.
Yes, but if you're able to, again, in the Mexican tradition, if you're able to pass on their memories and continuously remember who they were or something about them, it gives them uh, the purpose or ability to live on. So,
Okay.
granted, I think the point that I'm just trying to make is you're right. Where of course, if everyone just forgets your existence, then it's as if you never existed, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the only one that I think therefore I am. It's like, well, the only person who's gonna remember you is yourself if you're gone.
Yes. That's
Then
not how that Descartes intended it, but okay, I'll
I know,
let you.
yes, it's not how Descartes did.
But I sort of get the spirit of your
The
thing.
idea with Descartes is the whole point, right? Is that you had nothing is real other than yourself. You know nothing to be absolute,
Sure.
like to fully exist or be conscious, for example, other than yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
you are the only one that can think,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everything else can literally be just an illusion or a figment of your imagination.
Okay.
But the idea that once you're dead, everything else will cease to exist.
Yes.
So nothing exists other than so kind of playing on that. The only person that's going to remember, yeah, I think I brought it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's go back to like where this thing got derailed.
Hmm.
Um I said it was the whole jumping into the love. The cost of it is just too high
Hmm.
for certain people, or might be too high. Maybe it's not, and like you convince yourself that it is, right? But that was one of the themes that I sort of took away from that movie.
One of the themes you took away was that the
Yeah,
cost of jumping in is too high.
no. They toyed with the idea. Obviously, with a movie like that, and this is sort of like I think art sometimes has to take a leap and say this is the way that human beings should go,
Hmm.
and so I got to see about a girl, and he
Yeah.
sort of like takes a leap at the end because art to some degree wants to create momentum and direction in people's lives who don't know what to do, or
Yeah.
it provides some kind of like solace or some kind of conclusion. which is why I think that sort of makes good art. And maybe sometimes the conclusion could be opposite as well. As long as you explore the journey and then take a leap,
Mm-hmm.
I respect the leap, right? Whether he's like, no, I'm gonna go just like be a monk somewhere and like not be away from people,
Mm-hmm.
that's still a leap. And I want to understand the motivations that led him to that leap, right? Because for someone with that degree of abuse and mistrust, it's understandable why he would not want to take that jump.
You
Although,
mean when
like
he was younger?
uh, no, at the end, like where he finally does go to the girl.
You're talking about the
W-
main character now.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
Will
okay,
Hunting.
got you.
I would understand why he would, just be like, oh, screw it, I'll just like even leave my friends behind and just like move somewhere else and just do
Yeah.
construction. They could have happened based on his past, but the journey of him and Robin Williams together
Mm-hmm.
sort of led him to a better place.
Led him to having more trust
Yeah,
in belief in people,
yeah.
so that he was willing to take the leap and trust that she'll be different, or that things will be different,
That he will be different.
or that also, yeah, he will
Yeah,
also
right.
be
It's
different.
so many like things have to go right. It's weird. So sometimes I actually sit down and think
Mm.
about it. Like people like our parents have been together for like decades, and it's like, oh yeah, they've been together, but you don't actually sit down and appreciate or actually think about how difficult that is.
So wait, do you think then that um the reason we've moved or shifted away from this narrative is in real life and in media and in art is because humans just never were able to come through to make that possible, to make that love and that ending, that love story ending possible? Or do you think it's more?
Well, you were trying to. The other thing you were trying to do is make a comparison of the art and its themes in the '90s versus now. I
Yeah.
think the reason you feel differently about it now is because our values as a community and a society
Hmm.
are very dispersed and diverse. Whereas before, to some degree, we could agree on like this is the common path. There was always division.
Hmm.
There was always whatever, and the idea behind this is actually called juvenoia. It's very well documented, where um
What is it called?
juvenoia. Yeah,
Juvenoia.
there was a sick Vsauce video about it years ago, and it sort of like stuck with me.
Okay.
Where the video sort of explores, just imagine everyone sitting at dinner at a table and then the kids are not having conversations and they're looking down at something else apart from their food and just like immerse in the thing,
Okay.
right? And they're not talking to their parents, they're not talking to each other. Now if I describe that scene to you right now,
Yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, cell phones.
Yeah.
But that was Charles Dickens era where they were talking about books because we were just sitting together,
Yeah.
but they were like reading,
Reading.
and they're like, "Oh, the world's going to shit because people are not having conversations anymore."
Hmm.
And now you have the same story. Then in the '60s it was TV. Now it's cell phones. Like it's the same thing, repeating itself over and over, and it's also part of the reason why the quote unquote older generations always say the next generation is going to shit. Like in the '60s, it's like, oh, rock and roll is the devil,
Yeah.
but and now the same people are like, oh, hip hop is like crap, and like they don't make sense,
Yeah.
and now even though we know these things, we will continue doing the same thing because it's human psychology.
But I don't think it can be avoided that the themes, or yeah, the themes that these books were written about, or these TV shows or these movies were written about, has also shifted. Like,
Yes,
so there, that claim I think hasn't been explored yet, where just because the phenomenon of, something new and grabbing the attention of the younger generation, um, it has been captured. It's still the information that's being fed though into those children via the medium is different. So there still should be. Are you saying that that even
so
covers for
I'm
that and
gonna
there's
I'm
no
gonna
effect?
refute that because think about when rock and roll was live. they literally did not show Elvis's lower half of the body. It's like, oh, it's gonna make women go crazy or like
Yeah,
sex all over the
yeah,
place.
yeah.
So where's the difference between that and now you talking about these value systems changing, right? Value
Divorce
systems,
rate.
okay, but
That's an example of how it's shifted, though,
yeah, yeah,
right?
but even and so that was part of the whole feminism in the '60s into the '70s. That's when it started. It's still ongoing, but it's part of the same curve, right?
So, are you attributing divorce rates due to feminism?
No, no, no. Statistically,
Yeah,
the number of divorce rates per capita
yeah,
started increasing in the '70s.
yeah. Which then is in line with also the rise of
Yeah,
different mediums that also weren't projecting the same kind of message or a stronger message
sure.
about.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is it's not new to this next. It was the same thing in the
Okay, like
90s.
50 years ago, basically, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
still something
So
that.
you're comparing the '90s to like future,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
But this
Where
existed in the 70s.
yeah, it's just sure it's getting turned up
Hmm.
and it feels like it's getting further dispersed, but it's the same trend.
So then, my question to you then is: are we trending? In your opinion, are we trending even then in a negative direction?
In order for me to say we're trending in a negative direction, I need to know what true north or true positive
Hmm.
is, right? Because just like today and like 40, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
everyone had a very spectrum of what is right? Because
Mm.
yeah, the conservatives, the liberals,
Of
the
course, of
whatever,
course.
right? So I think if one way you could ask that question is everyone living a more fulfilled life, we can both maybe say I think everyone can agree that level has started declining to some degree, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's all anecdotal stuff, right? Like no one's actually looked at are people legitimately worse off, and then even if we conclude that people are, then is that just subjective? Like people are feeling bad, but they're actually much better off because of
So,
the whole comparison thing.
so if I were to sum up how I see the value system of the like as the generations have moved forward, especially currently in this decade, there's definitely is more value on success and money, fame. Success can be just you know success in your job or like basically succeed. Just you want to succeed
Sure.
and just champion through to get to your goals, right? They tend to be money oriented, in my opinion. Um, or if they're not money oriented, um, there's. So I'm trying to also make it more concise. That's why. But the point is that let's just keep that for then. Let's just put that as let's say what I'm thinking of as far as currently. Then you have value systems that were more about how again like family and friends and like that was
Hmm.
major part of like that's where your happiness comes from. If if I'm trying to believe or basically I'm going to make this statement that I think this is coming from years and years of just generational knowledge saying at the end of the day no matter how rich a man was or powerful a man or a woman is, at the end of the day family, relationships, love, that always was what people ended up striving for, right?
Hmm.
In my opinion that message has been kind of put to the side, you know, sat away and left in the corner. Can you or would you argue that that is not an objective truth as far as humans and what we desire and what we strive for? That at the end of the day, what will make us all happiest is some form of like connection.
I like your question, and let me try to, I guess, dissect it. So one, love and family is no longer sort of the main focus. I
Mm-hmm.
want to say on a whole, statistically, maybe yes. However, that statistic is a very broad range of people, right? Like you're making vast generalizations to some degree, and sure, I'll give you that. But I want to sort of refute the thing you said about materialism and like financial sort of success. I think there was definitely a zone where people really went for that whole hustle culture thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the new sort of the next batch, the next generation, is sort of looking at people who really went all in on the hustle and see that they're still not happy. So I think they're actually going to start turning, where you see this people are now willing to work as long hours or whatever and sort of pursue their passions and do
Mm-hmm.
whatever else. So there is a bit of that, but I think the disconnect is coming where they're not replacing it with the love and family again, but they're replacing it with individual pursuits.
Yeah,
Where to some
that's what I was
degree,
trying to say.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, when I was
yeah,
saying about like success, I was like, there's something about not financial necessarily, but
yeah,
individual goals, making themselves feel important or value via their achievements.
yeah, yeah. And I think it is a very tempting thing to pursue, especially when we live in like a country and a culture like the West,
Mm-hmm.
right? Compared to like Eastern sort of Chinese, Japanese, and like other Asian sort of countries where
Yeah.
they're so centralized on like the concept of family, community, all that stuff. I think it's easier to revert back to sort of familial love sort of things as your goal. But going back to the whole movie thing,
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why we feel like we're sort of in a no man's land sort of abyss thing is what's the word? It's like the human centric philosophy, where in the past it was like God is the top, or family and love and the whatever else. Other people are the community or the collective takes precedent over the individual, versus and this sort of started in the 1700s. The ideas around humanism started around like Hegel and stuff talked about it already, where they're trying to like question the value and the need for the concept of God
Mm-hmm.
and just make it human centric. And pretty much the conclusion there was, if I'm able to draw myself as far ahead, I'm actually pulling humanity ahead with me,
Mm-hmm.
which, like, they made some pretty convincing arguments for it, but putting them into practice always feels a little off. And sometimes it's kind of like communism, right? Idealistically, it works like on paper, but when you put that into practice, it doesn't always yield the same results.
Yeah. Because well, in my opinion, it's because humans are their own like Achilles heel.
Hmm.
We find a way to screw it up, or we're gonna cause our own destruction. So what was the like? If you were to sum up what you were saying, though, you're saying y- it's already
So I
been a direction that we've headed into our own, like our
so
self-centric.
I'll try to summarize that. So yes, I agree. Objectively, we've gone away. On average, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
obviously making
Of course.
generalizations about the world, but on average, the messaging has gone away from family first, love first, and all
Yeah.
that. And I disagree that it's not necessarily financial success, but now it's individualistic pursuits. How do I be the best me
Which you
that I can
technically
be?
do then agree, because that's what I was trying to
Yeah,
say.
sure.
I said
Yeah.
if not financial, then and I
Okay.
couldn't describe it, but you kind of summed it up as again individual success, which
Sure.
I acknowledge.
I was just going through my like
Yeah, yeah.
cycle of things, summarizing
Okay.
it.
So then, as far as generalizing the world, obviously you're gonna have a subset of groups or people that still hold to these traditional, quote unquote, traditional values, but you're saying in general you don't find that being in this society or in this culture you see it being more self-centric, or are you saying you do?
Well,
And
I
then I
think
guess more so the question is it a bad thing? Is it, do you personally think that, that message of our happiness will not be found anywhere outside of the connections we make on this earth? Love essentially. do you think that message still has value that we've forgotten, or do you think no, this is the new direction we're taking, and it's actually it has its fruits, and it maybe fixes upon an old problem with the old system. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, I'm trying to say, I think love does actually answer all of our problems.
Jeez.
Like, actually,
Yeah.
right?
Fromage. El formaggio.
It's absolute cheese, 100%. I think I'm a bit more savvy because I watched Good Will Hunting, and it really reminded me of it kind of brought back a couple other shows again that had similar themes, and that's why I was like, oh, whatever happened to that storyline, right? And it really hit home with me because it made me connect to my own relationship and like how much I value her and how much she's done for support like in my life as far
Mhm.
as like the support, the lessons I've learned via like her pushing back on me and showing me where I can improve or um yeah, like basically there's been so many benefits,
Mhm.
right? Um and not just in the sense of like self-serving where it's like, oh, you're just getting me like doing my laundry or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like picking me up from work, not a weird thing or
Yeah.
getting groceries. Like, you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
like it's not
Going a
yeah,
sandwich.
be me. Yeah, I literally like not service. It's literally through the interactions and through her like teaching me things about myself,
Yeah.
right? As well as supporting me in when I'm down or sad or
Yeah.
something like that, and providing me that confidence to just like keep on truckering through. So
Yeah.
again, there's just value upon value, um, and then you just even go back to like just the time spent together and the relational, like how much that also brings you up or yeah, basically there's just I can only say so much, but I was like, I know that not everyone will relate to this type of like
Sure.
relationship, right? So there are different types
So
of relationships too. So
let me try to like reel it in a bit and like
yeah.
maybe so the value that you see in love and your relationship
Hmm.
is being seen, being understood, and being made better.
Yeah.
Right? It's just to summarize all those things that you said. It's like those sort of
Yeah,
three envelope.
and I think that people will be like most relationships regardless of how it's done. So the path may be different, but I think the result is the same. I think
Okay.
that, you know, different types of relationships will garner that same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
For example, like your mom can make you be seen,
Exactly.
or can understand you and
Exactly.
can push you to like be
Yeah.
better. It's just a
Teacher,
rough example. Yeah,
friend, like there's different all
yeah,
those dynamics. Yeah.
sure. So I guess to some degree I agree with you, but then I also want to sort of push back a little bit. So the degree with to which I agree with you is we're sort of born into social contracts,
Hmm.
like from day one, like even sort of orphans or whatever, they have the orphanage to sort of care for them to some degree. It's very different from having the one-on-one like paternal maternal contact,
Yeah.
right, with your immediate family.
And that's usually a problem, right? Like,
It is, yeah.
the way it's painted is that foster homes are terrible because the kids just feel so isolated and alone
Right, right.
and whether it's even the system itself, if the people are not caring, or whether the kid just because they don't have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
because they feel abandoned already off the rip, feeling like their parents didn't want them, it already ruins their psyche. So I guess that to me, like you're saying, speaks to it as well. But sorry, I cut you
Yeah,
off.
no, no, no. Basically, you're adding to the point that I'm trying to make, where as human beings, we cannot escape connection.
Hmm.
And I've tried. Right? But really it's to some degree you are born into a social contract
Yeah.
that you have not chosen.
Yeah.
And you just got to deal with it or like make the best of it to whatever degree.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with that. The part that sort of keeps me at least going into the cheese of it all
Hmm.
is the probability of I guess, the person just saying, "Oh, F it, this is not worth it anymore," or "You're just too much to deal with," right? So that's definitely one. It's like, "Oh, I'm like sharing the most vulnerable parts of myself with you, and when I need you the most, or whatever,
Yeah.
you're just dropping the ball. And now what?"
The unreliability of
Yeah.
people.
And then the other part is, um, even the likelihood of finding the right partner for you.
Yeah.
Because think about it this way, there's definitely been historically couples who've stayed together where they're not actually good for each other, but they just stick it through because like they said they would or whatever. But that's like, I'll argue, it's tough, right? Because yeah, they stuck it together and like at least they have someone, but it's not the right person.
Yeah.
And like that's the whole comparison thing. Like you could have had a better life if you just held out and like married this other person, or dated this other person, or picked a different
If
group
you
of
didn't jump the
friends,
gun and
or even like
yeah.
friendships, right? Pick a different group of friends and like you would
Yeah.
have a much better life, like different opportunities open up for you. So one is that getting dropped when you need someone the most, and
Yeah.
the other one is like, what if you actually pick the wrong set of people to spend your life with?
Yeah.
Like these are all real problems. Like that's why I was saying the cheese thing.
The
Like I
real
agree
yeah.
with the cheesiness
In a
of like
perfect
everything you
world,
said.
what I'm saying is so beautiful, but then
Yeah,
it's like it's similar to what you're saying about any kind of theory. The idea of it is better than the actual practice.
not always though, because sometimes, again, going back to the whole love thing,
Yeah.
you can read about love as much as you want, but then in the moment that you feel it, like no amount of reading can actually compare to feeling it.
Yeah.
It's like a double-edged whatever thing.
So you agree, but so that kind of brings up to you though. You're saying even though you have been, um, like you said, you've been trying to avoid it, but you have now signed some contracts, some yeah, and
I've
you're
been like born into a
or
social
you
contract.
yes, um, for you though, you're saying the pain is not worth the care, the love, the
Yeah.
relationship. Is that in all relationships so far?
So the way I do it is I gauge the level of intimacy of each
Yeah.
thread or each connection.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm willing to go this far,
Yeah.
and like that's where I'll stop.
Gotcha.
And like, so thinking about, I guess this is where my neurology actually works against me. Because think about like when you first meet a friend, or you first meet like a girl who you're interested in,
Yeah.
you just want to go all in and just talk to her, like go back and forth the whole time. And I like, I'm not immune to that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're sort of like going off the dopamine hits, and you're not actually thinking about like what this all means,
Yeah.
and you just sort of get lost in the shuffle without actually stepping back and like, okay, is this actually the right thing to do? Sorry, I forgot your question.
Yeah. I was like, okay. The question was about just how love not being worth the pain.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm saying this now, but I still struggle with,
Yeah.
am I wrong about like saying this? Like,
Yeah.
am I blowing the pain out of proportion?
Yeah.
Because we know that humans have a negativity bias. So all these logical things are in my mind as I'm doing this,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, I still have to like explore my life as a story. I've got to tell myself some kind of story about my life
Yeah.
to make sense of it.
No, I guess that's kind of fair of you to be honest and acknowledge you might be, like you said, for lack of better words, lying to yourself in some extent.
I probabilistically,
Yeah.
I'm telling more the truth about myself, because if I am lying to myself,
Yeah.
I eventually I will catch on, because I do think the truth has a way of forcing its way into
Mhm.
reality, or forcing its way into consciousness. Because if I spend my entire life saying I have a blue phone,
Yeah.
and like I keep saying it to myself, and everyone else is sort of like joining in on my delusion,
Yeah.
at some degree, someone or something is going to make me say otherwise. Right? And because I've done this, even over the past year, I have been able to successfully lie to myself for months on end,
Hmm.
almost a year plus. But then eventually it breaks. and then you got to pick up the pieces and like make sense of why you told.
So then, wait, why? Then why even lie to yourself? What's the value that you're gaining?
Because and this is not associated with like love lies
Oh, okay,
specifically,
gotcha.
but in general, you lie to yourself as a self-defense mechanism
Because the truth is not worth bearing.
because the truth is too scary or too like
Yeah.
you know.
It's
You
back
can't
to Will
wrap yourself-
Hunting, truth about himself,
Yeah,
fear of
yeah.
himself. He'd rather
And
act
that-
confident than show the fear.
And that's why I like the movie, right? Because it explores. You get to see bits of yourself in the character, even though you haven't had his exact experience.
Yeah.
You sort of see him.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's what he's doing, and that's what I did.
So I think that's another thing then, is that it's so, those internal struggles are so relatable. And again, like, hot take, just throwing out this sentence and seeing what you think of it, is all the social media, all the content we're producing, it's all to be another mask, another layer of lying to ourselves, hiding that.
You mean social media in general,
Social media in general.
or like what we're doing right now?
Well, it's funny because I think the final thought that I had at the end of the film, or through the film, but the final thought I had on this train that I was on, that I'm kind of now like just vomiting out to you, is that I was like, you know what, I want this podcast to be is just whatever is going on in our heads,
Okay.
being allowed to share it again. Because that was part of me that was thinking, I don't think I see that outlet as much, where I get to just vomit out what I'm thinking, as far as like you were saying, the main character, Will Hunting, not being able to be vulnerable, or having to put on this front, and not being able to kind of go through their own head, and like you said, stop
He's not
lying
a
to yourself.
they, it's a he. Get his pronouns right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Pronouns are retroactive now. Let's go.
So that he's lying to himself. He is scared, and he can't allow himself to find, that, what do you call it? Vulnerability. Where I'm like, maybe I want this to be that outlet, right? Where maybe you say something and someone just gets it and
Sure.
feels what you're feeling, and then relates to you, and then now through your sharing your journey, now people can kind of maybe join the ride.
But it's funny you say that, because to me, I see the people's connections with me as too valuable to make like public, right? And this is sort of why, like, I have no intention to inspire a stranger or be like, oh, someone like looked at my story and like, oh, I can relate to that. I have no intention of relating, and that's why I think that is better done with some of your other guests who are willing to sort of, like, I will connect with you as an individual.
Yeah.
And like say things or whatever, because
Well, I think that's the point, though, that I'm trying to make, is that everyone, including myself, have the opportunity to share something that's going on in their head.
sure.
So it's allowing people to then connect, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, but I like to not. Yes, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. You don't want to. It's not that you're not trying to. You're saying you don't want to have any kind of connection to people.
With other people, with strangers, with like random people knowing things I'm feeling or thinking. I'm willing to explore ideas, right?
Yeah.
And but not. I'm not willing to explore my personal life.
What's going on in your head.
Yeah, no. See, that's the weird part, right? Ideas are also in my head.
Yeah.
But I think, let me see. I'm trying to pick out the fallacy in what I just said here, pretty much.
I think I get what you're saying.
No,
I get what you're saying. It's like you don't want people to relate to your personal internal struggles or the thoughts that are running in your head about yourself or how you feel about yourself.
See, I don't think it's that either, because
okay.
I tend to be pretty open with, like, if I'm weird around people in social settings,
you'll just say it.
I say it. Like, I embrace that part of myself. But and this is where I'm like, where is the fallacy in what I just said? Because there's something about this that is weird to me. Maybe it's this. Um, and this is another thing I don't like about testimonials and stuff,
Yeah.
because people are only willing to talk about stuff when they're quote unquote fixed, or they come out on the other side.
Yeah, but we already talked about that.
When?
Well, I guess just you and me have had these conversations.
Sure.
When starting this whole
Yeah.
thing, it
Yeah,
was, I don't want that to be the story of like, oh, it's
Yeah.
fixed now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the point, though. Is I want people to just blurt out what they're in the moment
Sure.
to flush it out.
So, sorry to cut you off.
Sorry, yeah, I cut you off. That was my bad.
But it's fine. We'll cut each other off. But this is where I think there are levels to this game,
Yeah,
because one, so these are the stages as I see them.
Mhm.
One, I'm going through something difficult, and I'm lying to myself and denying that it's happening. So at that point, I can't even tell you about it because I don't know about it,
Yeah.
or I'm sort of trying to stifle it down. And then I get to know that I'm lying to myself and figure it out. And there's no way, I think most people will not be willing to share with you because you're still trying to evaluate whether the thing is real or not. Like you're trying to
Yeah.
decipher truth from fiction, right? And then you get into this part where you accept that you're lying to yourself, and
Yeah.
now you're like, shit, I have to fix this. That's probably where you're going to be willing to talk about it to some degree, because you're still in the shit. You haven't fixed it. But that's where it's like, okay, I know where I am. I did all. And I think that's what I'm doing right now.
But you know, what
Right.
I think okay, well, just maybe this isn't even answering what you're saying or in response to what you're saying, but for me, the reason people first of all share after they've solved it, or they don't like to talk about it during the process, is because at the end of the day, we all are looking for some kind of hope, right? We're
Yeah.
all always looking for hope that things get better.
Yeah. Talk to me and you'll find no sign of hope.
Right. So that's part of it where,
Yeah.
what's the point? Like maybe people won't even want to listen to it because they'll be like, yeah, well, this guy's just around in circles in his head and he's not getting anywhere. It's just showing me there's no hope. And so, I don't know, maybe in some way you, like, I don't know, maybe.
So here's the thing, because you and I have talked about this, because I always, whenever I watch kids' movies and
Yeah.
stuff, I always like the moment where everything goes to shit, like the Croods,
Yeah.
when they like leap off the thing and like go into the black smoke.
The cartoon.
And I'm just like, end the movie right there. Let all the kids go home
I
crying.
haven't
Because
seen that movie, actually.
it's
how does it
the
end?
concept, right?
Yeah, so
like
they jump
whenever-
into black smoke and then...
And then they're supposed to come out on the other side, like there's like
Yeah,
greenery and
got
whatever.
you.
But I'm like, if you just end it in that black smoke,
And uncertainty.
and then all the kids go home crying, like that's how I feel most of the time,
Yeah.
right? But like I remember you actually fought back and be like, no, there has to be this like final push, or
Yeah.
some kind of conclusion. And I think that works really well with art, because I believe art is supposed to elevate life, or like explore the things in life that might not have happened in reality,
Yeah.
but you can dream about it. It provides some sort of hope, which is not real or not in reality, but you could always aspire to this conclusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, this makes me think of Inception. I think this is why we had this debate because of Inception. Which is hope with the top.
yeah.
I think that's where it stemmed from.
Yeah.
And it's that basis,
Like,
right?
yes,
You
screw
need
with everyone.
you need to give hope, right? And you don't want to leave that
Yeah.
man stuck in his own dreams
Yeah.
and not show some sign of no, he made it. He
Yeah.
actually made it, right? Which I think that was what the director was saying, is that he left it spinning but then showed a little topple to something about that. Like
Yeah.
and
It
yeah.
makes you question hope, or like,
But it
know,
gives you some sort of hope.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
hope is
yeah.
what lets people, like you were saying, though, it makes people love the movie more. Because then it doesn't just leave them feeling like garbage. And
Mhm.
that's, people are looking to feel that.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to tie this back to like me saying my stuff, or
Yeah.
us saying things when we are not out the other end.
Yeah.
So now the question becomes, what is the value of talking about it? Like, am I just here sort of airing out my dirty laundry because I feel like shit and now I want everyone else to feel like shit? Or, like, where does it go?
Yeah.
Because I recently was watching this doctor guy do 20-minute video on passive suicidal ideation and sort of exploring like what that means and like what it is. And when he was talking, I was more so. The reason I bring it up is because of his perspective on it.
Okay.
He's like, "Oh, I have felt this in the past," and like he's sort of empathizing with the people who are feeling it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it's like, oh, again, he's doing the thing where, okay, I'm out on the
Yeah.
other side, and now I'm trying to talk to people about it. Also, I'm like a doctor, so
Mhm.
I know what I'm talking about, sort of deal. But if he was in the middle of going through it, like, what can he actually say? Because now he's like, oh, I still feel it sometimes, but every time I feel it, I ask myself, why am I feeling it? So it's either because everything is fine in life and it's just a symptom, or something is actually not wrong in life and I have to fix it.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like that, right? Where because he's come out the other end, he is now able to like add some value to the people listening to him. But if I'm just saying the things that are wrong with me and I have no idea how to fix it or what to do, or I have tried different things and they failed. So maybe one of the values is
Yeah.
I share the thing that I tried and it still didn't work. Maybe that's a value. So now you
But
can
it could
like,
also just be the value of talking about it, because
hmm,
so part of it though that is that we're not really I guess focused on is, I'm not saying you just air it out and then we just go, oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
So what you do yesterday, you know what I mean? Or, let's talk about something else. I think the point is we're still talking about it, and
sure.
we'll end up talking about it, where ideas will come out, thoughts, where someone who relates to what you're talking about is now able to then join in on a conversation and explain or feel understood, or heard, or may hear something that resonates with them, that sticks out to
Okay.
them, that might give them a little bit more solace.
Okay.
So I think there's still going to be some form of hope, because even if we're talking and you or I say something that's pretty down, or just basically we say something that we're looking for help with, you're not going to just leave it at that, right? You are going to talk with me through it. So there's going to be, if I feel hope in the conversation, right, or you feel hope, because again, we're going to, as friends, we're going to assist each other anyways and give each other some form of hope. That hope will translate.
I agree with you where whatever you said does solve the problem for people who are willing to listen.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to listen. So here's legit what happens,
Yeah.
right? At least at this stage or this phase of
Yeah.
whatever is happening. I have identified the problem to some degree.
Yeah.
I'm still sort of fine tuning it. And I have run through actual conversations and simulated conversations of what's wrong and then question the other side and like go
Yeah.
through this person used this solution or this method or
Yeah.
this whatever. And so, as other people told me what to try or what to do, or as I've told myself what to try and what to do,
Yeah.
all the only response I get back is shut the hell up and don't do anything. Or it's you sort of devalue any of the advice or any of the ideas that you get because you have the ideas. I've yet to encounter a novel new idea or a novel new problem. It's just that I'm unwilling to change. So what now? Like, sure, I other people are like commenting. It's like, oh, man, you should try this, or I felt this way.
Yeah.
And then so I'm like, good, it worked for you. F off. Like that's sort of my go-to instinct. I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, and I'm not saying what they're saying doesn't have value.
Yeah.
But at this point in the game, when you're not through the other side, when you're not willing to come through to the other side, you're not even willing to like broach that topic.
Okay.
Again, going back to what's the point of this?
So is it then more so that you just don't want to talk about it because you don't see value that you're getting? Because I'm not saying you have to talk
Mhm.
about anything personal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We're still exploring these ideas.
I'm exploring the idea of talking about stuff that you're struggling with
Yeah.
while you're still struggling with it.
So what? I don't get your point then of you're bringing up yourself as far as.
So with me, it's just
Yeah.
like that love and rejection thing. With me, at least the stage I'm in right now, even if you tell me something that you think will be helpful, I will just dismiss you.
So that's just you though.
Yeah,
So what's
I'm talking for myself here.
that's fine then. What's
Yeah.
wrong with that?
What do you mean? What's wrong with that?
What's wrong if that's the stage you're in and you dismiss
So then, what's the point of sharing it in the first place? Right?
because you're
I'm just gonna be dismissive to whatever
well then that's why
else.
you don't share if you don't want to.
Mm.
I'm not asking you to be outside of who you are, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
if you're not in a position to want to say something or share something, or you think no, there's no value that you're going to garner from this, so you're not going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in that position many times.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, there's no point. I've said this. I know what's going to come out of this conversation. Just by even just knowing the person, I know what
Yes.
their response is.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to engage, and we're just going to move the topic over, just switch it up, or I'm just
Exactly.
going to be hypothetical about it. Then that is like, you know what I mean? That's
So-
not an issue.
Well, again, it sounds like you're unsure about why I went in this direction. And to clarify, I went in this direction to explore why should I talk about something
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I'm still in the middle of it. And I think we came to the conclusion of why I don't see the value in talking about
Yeah.
a thing when I am going in the middle of it. And the other thing I said was you probably get other guests who are more useful for this kind of like exploration.
I guess so, but you also then that's the thing. I think we went in a bit of a circle because you also did admit or mention that you weren't the type to also not just say certain things about yourself. So the point is you're still gonna end up sharing about you in a way that people might find themselves connected or relatable.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's all I'm trying to say as far as
sure.
you,
I
right?
think
Like-
that here's the stupid ass thing about human beings. Like even this whole dismissive thing that I went on.
yeah.
There's thousands of people, millions of people who do the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Right? Like you also said to some degree,
Yeah.
you do it to some degree as well. So
Yeah.
like it's a universal f up of humanity.
No, it's true. I think the one thing though that has always gotten me is, you know when you know when you're well, I don't know, maybe you were like a nerd in school, but when you're in class and the teacher asks a question and you're like, someone else take the hit. You know what I mean? Like someone else just answer the question, or who wants to read first? And you're like, someone better read.
Yeah.
It's that idea where you want someone else to take the bullet, and you don't mind listening, and you don't mind being a part of what's happening. You just rather not be the one on stage. So the same point happens here, where I wouldn't be the one who wants to kind of ask the question. Maybe I don't even think there's value to be gained, so I'm not going to ask the question. But if I end up stumbling upon something where the question gets asked and there are people I don't really know, I'm pretty interested to know what they say, right? I will give them 30 seconds just to see if there's anything I haven't heard before, because I'm still interested by the question,
Okay. No.
right? So
I see that.
the value is that there too, where I think the point is like we are still exploring these ideas.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if we get to explore them here and someone gets something from it.
Okay. No, I think you turned me around on that because I do the same thing too, where I'm like, it provides me some level of twisted joy to know
Yeah.
that someone else also like has the same blocks that
Yeah.
I do. It's a very human thing
Yeah.
to.
We want to
you
feel
know.
connected. It goes back to that connection thing.
I feel-
I'm just kidding. I just had to make it up.
No, it's
That's just-
no. Connection is one way to say that,
Yeah.
but another way, the way that I look at it is, okay, this is an actual problem. I'm not just crazy. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
to me. I'm looking for a sense of validation that the thing I'm worried about is the thing I'm supposed to be worried about, and not something like I'm blowing out of proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I think through having conversations naturally, not imposing, not pushing you to have them, you never know. You might find your answer, or even if you're just sitting in on a conversation.
It's funny because this week there was like a weird scenario that happened,
Yeah.
which made me feel connected, and I will embrace this connection
Okay.
actually, because I have a really horrible track record of asking stupid questions.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was randomly just sitting at my desk at work, and a guy pops up beside me. He's like, I have a question. And I was like, oh, is it a finance question? Is there something I can do for you? He's like, dude, it's so funny. He's like, I have a problem. And he so pretty much. So I bought a new pair of headphones. And I put the headphones on, right? And I'm using them. But now I can't put my glasses on because they won't go in. I felt so at home because like it's literally like something. It's that problem is some days like solving a Rubik's cube for me because I'm
Yeah.
like trying different things like jamming my
To get your glasses
yeah
on.
exactly. And this is like a really smart person.
Yeah.
But it's just like when you have certain kinds of intelligence, and I felt so good. I was just like, oh, you know what you should try? Take the headphones off. Because he got new headphones and new glasses.
Yeah.
Two problems he never had
Yeah.
before this week. Like, oh yeah, take the headphones off, then put the glasses on, and then put the headphones on top of the glasses. And he's like, sure, I'll try it. 5 minutes later, I walk by his desk. I'm like, and he's like, yeah, oh yeah. Man, I felt so good. I felt so good that day.
Because you felt like you connected him. Was it on two levels then? Because you thought, like, one, the glasses headphone problem, and then two, the stupid question part?
Yeah, because like most people, like
Yeah.
if a grown man comes and asks someone else that question,
Yeah.
you just look at him weird.
Like, what a
like,
weird question. To be
yeah.
honest. Yeah.
But I'm like, I get you, man. Like, and he was so like happy. I felt useful that day. Like out of everything else I did, I'm like, yes, I like
Yeah.
fulfill my purpose. Oh man, that was the best.
I get it. Actually, no, I get it. Well, not to, it's just the point. The point you're making though is still like you're bringing it back to like just the simplest things, right? That you feel like you now have this thing with that guy. It's weird though because maybe I'm crazy now, but I feel like if I look back at my experiences with things like that, little things or little moments like that, I feel like I have this hidden now like secret like connection like with this person, or not secret but special, like, you know what I mean, not like something that we can joke about or something that people won't understand.
So I want to clarify. I didn't feel special because I told him the answer.
No, I know that.
I felt I felt special because someone else had the same kind
Yeah.
of problem.
Yeah.
Oh man, because anyone could have said that to
Yeah.
him.
But at some point you can always bring it back as a joke, or you can always, and he'll get it. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh no, he was dead serious.
no, I know he was dead serious. What I'm saying is at any point you can bring it up as a joke. And no one, like if you're in a room with like a meeting, a team room, whatever, anything, you bring that up as a joke, something about glasses and headphones, and he might laugh, but no one else will. That's what I mean. There's something now unspoken that he will get just because of that memory that you guys have, right? Almost like an inside joke.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
So I don't know.
So
I think it's something I definitely want to explore more with people. Though it's just to go back to what I was trying to bring up, trying to say before was how much we are just wired to want connections. But again, is this am I again blowing it out of proportion where this generation is still very focused on connections? Like, is this just the new form of connecting, right? Just creating content with each other so that we can, because a lot of the content that we also consume is like relatable content sometimes, as far as interactions. It might not be as deep, I would say, like as far as like the mental gymnastics that are going on up here, but they're still relatable. Like, so for example, my cousin and some friends love to send me like Filipino reels of like just what it's like with like Filipino aunts or uncles and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you send that and you relate and everyone likes it and follows or shares it. It's because you're relating to that experience with this random stranger who's also happens to be Filipino and has like how it's so relatable across like so many people who share this one factor, right? Or for example, like, yeah, my girlfriend will send me stuff where it's just like how, oh gosh, what did she send me? It's like one ongoing thing.
Sorry, I just need to. You gotta think I because you said girlfriend. You gotta get the term.
I'm sorry, fiance.
Right.
Fiance.
Yeah. Keep going. Sorry.
The point was that like a reel where it's just like when you have a massive headache, and I'm speaking as the girl now in this dynamic. It's like when the girl has a massive headache and the boyfriend's like, well, have you had any water today? It's like, I thought it was just like a small thing, but it's just like reels are made out of this
Sure.
moment because it's literally something that a lot of couples can relate to. So I guess I'm bringing this up because I'm thinking, yeah, okay, no, people are still creating content in relation to connections or things we have with people, right? Um, and moments that we can kind of understand. So is this the new way of sharing?
It's not new at all. Yeah, sorry, I'll
Yeah, what is
clarify
that? Yeah, what do
why.
you mean by that?
What you're talking about is something that's been done since the '90s, observational comedy, Seinfeld, right? It's just a different format, a different medium,
Yeah.
but observational comedy has existed for decades at this point, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, oh yeah, that Italian dad, like my dad also
Mm-hmm.
does that, and he's not Italian, but it's the same like dynamic. And the more you zoom into the specifics of a situation, just like art, the more universal it becomes,
Yeah.
right? So sure, I give you that, but I want to bring this back to connection, right? Because I've seen the flip side of like making reels and whatever, where these kids sort of like go into like TikTok houses or whatever, and they're making reels, but they're so focused on making the thing that they fail to connect. So sure, their product might be connecting other people in their audience, but they themselves are not connecting. And I think that's the one thing I wanted for the both of us in the process of making these, having these conversations,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't want to like create a piece of content. I actually want to like explore an idea with you and
Yeah.
connect with you like in the process. And like, should something come out of it, great. But at the end of the day, this is a genuine conversation that I'm trying to like dissect what you're saying and like where I agree with you, where I disagree with you.
Yeah.
And then I want you to sort of add to the pool of ideas in my mind and see like what makes
Yeah.
sense, what doesn't.
So okay, I like your point about observational comedy. That's a fair point. You know, it's just the new form of observational comedy where everyone can do it basically and
Yeah.
post it quickly.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through a whole production
Yeah.
and but I guess I was trying to connect it back to this again in my head. I'm envisioning how the message of like the human struggles that we're all going through is slowly no longer being talked about, or you don't hear as much about it, and it's because there's just so many more opportunities to uh, present yourself outside. You know what I mean? Like, why spend time sitting in your room alone, struggling with your own internal feelings and battles, when you can go out there and post something funny or even watch something funny on your phone and just forget your internal struggles.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like either be part of the solution of like just entertaining the world or just entertain yourself with other people's things. And in my head I'm like, okay, yeah, this is why we're not seeing or why I'm not seeing content that's really focused on like oh, what will really make me happy or what will really do this. And or maybe it's just getting overshadowed because there's just so much more fun and excitement from just having, you know, a quick entertainment is it's good. It's dopamine. It makes you happy. Um, but yeah, I think I'm saying like, is it still that we're losing that message, right? That message or
I'll come back to that question. I want to revisit that idea of Juvenoia that I brought up earlier,
yeah,
because you're saying now instead of sitting in your room, you could just watch TikToks and like distract yourself
yeah,
from the internal struggles and the growth that you need to do.
yeah,
But again, this is no different from like decades ago, where in the 60s, the
yeah,
introduction of television. It's like, oh, instead of sitting down and thinking about like how I can improve myself,
yeah,
I just flip the TV on, and there was literally a whole generation that was grown up on TV. Like it's just
yeah,
go and then we sort of have hard drugs and like LSD and all these other things.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, alcohol. I don't want to think about my problems.
Well, what if
No,
that's
I'm
the
out
start of the
with.
decline though? So, because I thought you were gonna bring it back to the books first,
Mm,
right? Why I think like if you were brought it back to the books, I was already going to
sure.
kind of counter, or I had this counter thought was we have a whole study on literature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, we have a whole degree as well in film studies, right? Like the but I think, okay, so focus on the literature part,
Go ahead.
the literary themes, the concepts, you know, you always broke it down. They always found a way back into like, again, human interaction, struggle, something like that. Like, so it's very like here to like ourselves. Then you go into the film studies, and there is still a lot about how you invoke emotion and the connection. Like, you know, tight close-up shots are meant to be more intimate, right?
Yeah.
Versus far away shots. So like, there still is like a connection of like how you can connect to people and create that message of feelings and want and desire. So there's these studies. I started smiling when you were talking because one, I was imagining like TikTok studies, like, you know what I mean, history TikTok, and just like, oh man, look at how they did these shots. But it brought it back even more because there's literally a reel of this guy who's like, dance class is 70 years from now, and he does this like really weird British or like very like old school accent, and he's like, so now we're going to whip, and then you nay nay, and like it was just so, and like the way he's doing it, but he's doing it so like as if he had now deconstructed the dance, and it's classical dance, and it's like, now you have to do this, and it's like, and 1 and 2 and 3, and it's just like, and he's like, did someone give you some kryptonite? Because that was the worst Supermaning that hoe I've ever seen. Like, it's just, it's like, so that's the point of like, you know, like you're taking the past and now you're deconstructing it as this art, this, but then I look at it and go, is that really going to happen where what we're coming out with now is going to be seen as the art of the future? Or are we going to go further beyond that and go, oh no, the literary books and the movies of before are going to be what we still look to?
Yeah, to some degree, I have considered this. I think the further in the future you go, only the creme de la creme will last. For example, there's probably tons of like pianists who existed during the
funny because they're mostly
Beethoven
probably
days,
all men anyways, but continue.
right? But there's a reason we only listen to a select set of like Baroque music or whatever.
Bach, Mozart.
Yeah. And I think the same thing is gonna happen with TV. The same thing is gonna happen with music as well as with reels or whatever. The truly thoughtful, artful things will last, regardless of the medium. But it's funny, you took it into sort of like arts and whatever. I was talking more so about the distraction side of it, and the self reflection, right? Because the human mind is so skilled, it could find anything to distract itself from its pain.
It's just easier, right? We want to distract ourselves.
And sometimes, some days, you should distract yourself because you don't want to like just live in this fog of whatever. It's disheartening. It sucks. Yeah, like it can actually break you down. Was listening to a set of people on another podcast who were talking about dealing with grief. Yeah, and it's all say like in this case, some lady's daughter passed away. Yeah, and she felt the worst in moments where she stopped thinking about her daughter. Like, because when she's thinking about her daughter, grief, pain, sorrow, suffering, everything. And then as soon as she stops and she gets some level of relief, that's when she feels worse. As soon as she gives into some kind of distraction, she's felt like, bad. How dare I? How dare I?
She was more feeling guilty.
Yeah. She felt guilty for not feeling pain. It's, again, I'm not saying, this is, again, we know that it's not the right thing to do. We know it's, but there's some level of me that relates to her. You know, I'm like, if someone I loved passed away, how dare I?
I shouldn't be happy right now. I shouldn't be laughing. Yeah. It feels almost
and it runs completely counter to the other side of me that's logically saying everyone dies. Every day is a gift, and like you have to sort of, you know,
and better that this person wanted you to be happy anyways, and laugh and joke. And
smile. But it's the two sides of it that sort of rip you apart, and I'm like, there's no answer to it at this stage, but you relate to it.
But I think like, like, what do you mean there's no answer to this stage though?
Um,
Like there's no
like
perfect
when you're
balance
in
or
this stage,
yeah.
because I do think, and this is where I struggle with, because you and I sort of brought up this idea of, is there an objectively right thing to do
Yeah.
regardless of who you are? And I struggle with that, because I'm like, I want to say yes so that, we can funnel into a common area,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if I'm lying to myself by saying no, because I don't want to believe that there's one objective path,
Mm-hmm.
or one objective destination rather, or it's actually like, a wide range of things that could satisfy you. I'm torn on those things too.
I think I was just playing a little bit of the conversation in my head right now of just trying to like, is it object like can I come up with an objective uh response to someone's death in this situation and then the counters? I think, excuse me. I think yeah, it is a struggle because I think of someone who is avoidant and just cannot deal with the pain, and so they'll do just a bunch of crap to like just avoid the problem. But some people will be like, yeah, that's the wrong way to go about it. But if wallowing in it was going to completely destroy them, right, and avoiding it is their way of coping,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it. It's just that's how they're coping with it. Then what's wrong with that, right? Um, and I'm like, yeah, technically there should then be no problem if they're just avoiding it. It's not the worst thing because that's just how they're coping with it and they're not really hurting anyone. And which I find tends to kind of be also one of the major markers of whether something is okay or not, especially now, is it hurting anyone else? Right? Like any kind of moral dilemma is always challenged with, well, how many innocent or bystanders are you hurting?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's zero, then it should be okay. Um,
But you disagree with that.
I. It's funny. I kind of. It's very nuanced. I think I agree with it. I think I do agree with that statement. But I think when applied to certain situations where it's like, you see, it's not hurting anybody. It's like, I could make an argument that you are potentially hurting like people, like in a indirect way. So let's use the example that I was proposing, where it's like, okay, this person is being avoidant, right? You're saying, okay, like, let's be understanding. This is how they cope. They just want to avoid everything. But what if, again, this person is not alone? They have family, right? So if it's the dad who's being avoidant, he's affecting his kids, right? Or let's say he's not necessarily affecting kids. He's doing a good job. Um, so I'm trying to even find like a further separation, like 3 degrees of separation of how
Mm.
he's hurting somebody,
Like his work is suffering.
something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Like the
Um,
office or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the idea is like, yeah, technically that you're hurting your kids. That's a bad thing. You
Yeah.
shouldn't do that. So okay, let's say that he's not hurting his kids. Let's say he puts all his effects on his kids. But then, yeah, somehow in his work, he's no longer doing this thing, which is now affecting his employees or people who work under him. But then people are like, you have to understand he's hurting. But it's this idea that his actions are having consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And had he been able to process it, I guess, quicker, right, or more efficiently, then he would have been able to be there for everyone else. Where the response with dope is like, yeah, but he's the one going through the pain. You have to let him go through it himself. I'm like, yeah, and that's the thing where I want to be understanding, and everyone can maybe pitch together to help him as he's going through this process. But that's the other part of responsibility that I guess that's the point. Like, you can always find a way to maybe say like, this person though has or will have effects around him that are unintentional, if
Mm-hmm.
and that,
Always.
yeah, and whether he should be responsible for that, that's still a conversation. I think this is very, like, again, we would have to really explore it, which
Mm.
maybe another time separately as a separate topic, or maybe we can do it
Why
now.
not? I'm interested in it right now. So
I think it's hard. How do you even like narrow it down? Because I just came up with like 3 different
yeah,
trees
yeah.
and branches.
So, oh, sorry. The thing that I wanted to explore is like deal with his grief efficiently.
Yeah.
What the hell kind of statement is that to begin with, right? Because it, sorry, it's sort of going back to this human thing of like everyone wants the best of the good stuff and none of the bad stuff, me included, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about grieving efficiently, I'm thinking about like an optimization function almost, like a mathematical whatever thing,
Yeah.
right?
2 days of
Because
this, 3 hours of
yeah,
this,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you're
And
done.
I'm just like, is grief supposed to be something that you optimize to have the least of? Like we want that, but like how do
Yeah.
you make that happen? And is it the right thing to do?
And is it possible?
Yeah,
Right? Because
yeah.
the point is people have different propensities for dealing with things, and I can't and will not disagree with that. Like I think to assume that people should just do it the way you're doing it is very um ignorant.
So let's apply a method to it. Let's just have a simplified
Yeah.
world where you're either a conflict avoidant, grief avoidant, or non-avoidant,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and sorry, there's so many connotations to each. So
That's the thing. It's yeah. How do you even?
when I say avoidant, am I referring to a person that has an unhealthy avoidant thing, or they're like doing it as a self-defense thing? Because think about, let's put me on the line here,
Okay.
where I am not conflict avoidant, right? Because if something's happening, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
deal with
You
it.
have an issue. Someone
Maybe
has an issue
I'll
with
take a
you.
little while to like sort through it, but like it's more painful for me to ignore it than to
Mm-hmm.
deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And which doesn't mean I don't ignore it at times because I'm like afraid to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
but it will get dealt with because it's just the easier thing to do.
Yeah.
So what I need to be careful of is as I'm trying to face on the conflict, I'm being empathetic to the person who might not want to be head on about it and sort of deal with that. So now flip it the other way. If I'm a conflict avoidant person,
Mm-hmm.
um, I need to be a bit more empathetic to the person who wants to face it head on and be like, I want every fiber in my being says ignore it and like let it just go away. But this person is not going to let me go, so I need to like face up to some degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
Face the grief or face the
Mm-hmm.
conflict to some degree, so that everyone else can sort of like sort themselves out. So I think I did sort of try. I didn't define the optimal
Mm-hmm.
function, but I did approach the optimal function because it's somewhere in the middle of facing it head on and trying to avoid it. Because even if you're an avoidant person, you have to face up to some level, to some degree, just so that everyone else can, figure it out with you. Because if I'm
Yes.
100% avoidant
Yes.
and like everyone's trying to approach me and like talk about it, and I'm just like either being
Mm-hmm.
non-responsive or cracking jokes or just doing everything I can to stay away from
Mm-hmm.
it, then I'm actually hurting the people who need this thing to get sorted out.
Okay, so the reason why I think it's hard and why, with what you're saying, I still think it's even more nuanced is because even the intention of why someone is wanting to be head on or avoidant matters. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, for example, what if I want to I'm very confrontational, but I'm just here in this conversation to just tell you how wrong you are, right? I wanna face you head on, just to say it to your face, like you're wrong, right? You gotta fix this. That's not really a room. You're not providing a space for resolution. You're not really trying to resolve anything. You're just trying to tell this person they suck. Um, so then there's that. Then you have someone though who's also avoidant, who could be avoiding, or sorry, maybe let me bring up the opposite though. The opposite of being like you're confrontational, but um, you just want to resolve it. You truly just want to hear what they have to say, find the middle ground, find some peace, enjoy. Like obviously that's the positive, that's the good thing. And then for someone who's avoidant, I can imagine someone who's avoidant who just selfishly doesn't want to deal with it, doesn't care, just
Yeah.
wants, like, hates it and just doesn't like it. So just,
Not my job, not my problem.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just like, you deal with it. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Which I think, yeah, it's very selfish. Which I think is my major measuring stick of whether something is good or not, is basically, are you trying to help others be, like, are you being more giving, or are you being more selfish? But the opposite of someone being avoiding could be, they're just avoiding it, not because they don't like confrontation, but they also just forgiving. Like, they're just willing to under the bridge. They're maybe even the one who was wronged, and they're like, it's okay. I just want to, like, move on. Where,
Sorry, can I ask you something?
yeah,
The person who's being avoidant, and you said they might be selfish.
yeah,
What if they're being self-preservational?
because they're not trying to lose their minds.
Yeah.
From
Like, because I struggle with this, right? I'm
Mhm.
like, I clearly did something that maybe some people might pursue as wrong.
Yeah,
Now, is that being selfish because I'm only thinking about myself?
yeah,
Or am I being self-preservational by not going into that area? Because if I do go into that area, I'm going to get hurt. And this is sort of where the whole vulnerability thing kicks in, right? Like,
so you're the one who is gonna get hurt. Sorry.
yeah,
Paint the
well,
picture?
think about, okay, I am an avoidant person,
Sure.
right? And I refuse to deal with this problem or
Sure.
this grief or this conflict
Yeah.
that's happening.
Yeah.
I am refusing to deal with it because I'm selfish and I don't care about anyone else,
Yeah.
right? As long as I'm not hurt and my world is fine,
Yeah.
like screw everyone else. Or I'm like, if I step into this thing, I'm going to get really hurt. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to deal with that pain. And so I
Mhm.
need to be careful whether I step into this or not.
Yeah. So
Same outcome, same output,
Yeah.
different approaches. So how do you differentiate selfish from self-preservational?
No, I think that's a fair point, because if you were to pair the person who's just coming in talking about it because they just want to say you suck, with a person who doesn't feel like they're going to be able to handle someone just yelling at them, then I get why the person just wants to avoid, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like, I can't take that, and now you're telling me I have to not be a selfish person, but the person on the other end is being selfish and just going to yell at me anyways. And that's reality, right? You're not going to always get someone who's just wanting to find peace on the other end of it. There are going to be people who just want to, like, yell at you. And so to put yourself in that position could be damaging. And
My mind is like, what if you get two selfish dickheads? Like, what are those? Like, I just want to yell at you, and the
Yeah.
other one's like, I can't give a shit.
yeah,
Anything you have to say.
which is kind of like which then they kind of perfectly work together, because then they both don't get, like, well, I guess one gets what they want.
No one gets what they
No,
want.
the person who avoids it. Oh, but the other one keeps chasing
Yeah,
you.
it's like
Just chasing each other in a circle, like, I want to yell at you. Leave me alone.
I just have the picture of my head. I'm like, no,
I can't. I don't talk about it. I think, how do I decipher the two, though? I think the difference, though, is that the person who is avoiding it at risk of getting hurt more, it's a little, like, I can empathize with it more. But at the end of the day, objectively, the action of so for example, pair this person with someone who genuinely just wants to resolve any issues. They want to talk, they want to be calm about it, they want to find middle ground, hear each other out, and the other person's like, oh, at risk of getting completely wrecked in this conversation, I don't want to have it. I have empathy for you not wanting to get hurt because it sucks and it's hard and you have no idea what the other person on the other end. But at the end of the day, objectively, you're being selfish when the other person's super ready to have this open conversation, have an open dialogue, and you're just saying, oh, I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
Hurt from what? Like, what are you getting hurt from? Like, I get maybe past experiences,
Yeah.
self-preservation, but
so that's the interesting thing, right? Like, maybe the thing that they're afraid of is illogical and they
Yeah.
shouldn't be afraid of it, or you can understand why they're afraid of it and they're unwilling to talk about it,
Hmm.
but there's definitely something underlying that would hurt them. Like it's imperfect knowledge,
Yeah, that's true too.
right? So, and it's like they're stuck in a cycle because they're unwilling to share that information, and therefore they're
Hmm.
self-preserving, and it comes off as selfishness. But they're also being selfish because they're unwilling to disclose that information. So it's both in my mind.
No, it's fair.
It's not like just a cut and dry whatever thing.
And I
I
think,
agree with the nuance thing.
yeah,
Every time I simplified it, I appreciate that you brought in the nuance, but I wanted you to get into
yeah.
that nuance because there's still like an explanation for the nuances.
I think it's interesting because you kind of, I said initially, I brought up this point of, um, it's people have to deal with it in their own way, that because they're all different, and I acknowledge that, and saying it was ignorant. I think I used the word ignorant to assume or think different, but then at the same time, I'm also then saying that objectively this action is selfish, which it's, so in some way I'm like, I think it's hard for me even to fully, um I guess because I see myself as the person who is willing to enter any conversation openly.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm not going to do it perfectly. I'm probably going to still like push some ideas
But
or
you're
whatever.
more
But
willing to like.
yeah, I'm the open, and like
Yeah.
I'll have a conversation. I'm not afraid
Yeah.
of dialogue. Um, that I see it as like when you close the door, it's like, okay, you're just shutting people out without even having an explanation or conversation. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, wow, like how did you make your assumption like this? So I guess I'm adding my personal thing of like, oh, that sucks. I hate that
Yeah, and I'm
experience.
bringing my own personal like
Yeah.
experience of like I'm uncomfortable like even disclosing the information in the first place. So
Mhm.
like I'm screwing myself in a way. But that's because I'm also genuinely trying to answer if I'm being self-preservation or selfish, and
By hiding.
by not providing the information by
Mm.
whatever. Because some days I will convince myself that I'm being selfish, but then when I dig into the
Hmm.
selfishness, I'm like, why are you being selfish? I'm like, oh, you're not being selfish. You're actually being careful.
Okay, you know what it is then, to kind of, I think, find the middle here is not everyone can just jump in and have an open conversation like you were saying, and they're not ready for it, um, whatever the reason be. That needs to be respected. Um, because yeah, you don't, like you said, you don't want someone to shut down or completely get destroyed by a conversation because you didn't know all the facts about why they don't want to have this conversation, or
Yeah.
um, yeah, maybe they're just not ready to hear XYZ about something, right? And it'll rock them in a way that you didn't expect. But I think to kind of make sense of my whole thing though about avoiding though as still some level of like uh in like basically suboptimal way of acting. I think in the end it still would be in benefit of everyone if you're able to have conversations in the end somehow and find some kind of peace, right? Like, is that wrong of me to think? I'm kind of opposing to you because I think what I'm trying to state is that you can't expect everyone to go about just having open conversations and finding like this optimal way of doing things because people are not ready for that. Um, because everyone's in their own little journey and struggling with different things. But it is still would be optimal then to specifically in conflict resolution have these have conversations, like
Mhm.
be able to talk things out and find
Mhm.
peace.
I agree that there should always be communication, but sometimes, depending on the person, there's also barriers to each communication. And I want to sort of pinpoint, like you're saying that you're the kind of person who's willing to put yourself sort of in the mix
Mm-hmm.
and like help resolve things, but not everyone is you. And
Yeah.
secondly, you are not the same way with everyone that you deal with
Yes,
as
exactly.
well. So
The
right,
willingness to
'cause
also be as open with certain
yeah,
people, like
exactly. Because if you sort of have a mini conflict with someone and they come in and like dump like a lifetime of baggage on
yeah,
you,
yeah, you're like,
you're like,
that's not my
what?
problem.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's fair
So,
too.
so again, going back to that self-preservation person, like they're already sort of like on edge
Yeah,
about like who to trust and like who to share with,
yeah,
and the risk of saying the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time
yeah,
is heavy,
yeah. Of course, definitely.
right? So,
No, that's a very
so
good point. I think
yeah.
that's a very good point.
It's being able to decipher all these
Yeah.
different elements, and like and then for the stars to align as well, and like
Yeah.
both parties sort of like see eye to eye. And tying this back to what we said earlier about divorce rates and like familial stuff,
Mm-hmm.
uh because of the low patience and like high octane sort of
Mm-hmm.
fast turnover of content, people are less willing to find that alignment or check for the possibility of that alignment in the first place. So it's just easier to just
Yeah,
keep to
move on.
yourself and
Yeah.
move on.
You're definitely more protected by doing that. And so I think that's your point though too, right?
You're right. I was exploring this idea in some of my monologues actually,
Yeah.
uh thinking about efficiency versus cost. I don't know, what was it? Basically, because if you choose not to have
Yeah.
those conversations, you're being inefficient because the
Mm-hmm.
conversation would resolve it quicker,
Mm-hmm.
but then the cost of getting that conversation wrong is significant and might dig you into a deeper hole.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like I was sort of questioning like how much efficiency am I willing to give up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and to what degree, because it levels with the game, right?
That's fair. Bringing it back then to also the what we brought it about, what we were talking about initially about basically grieving over someone who's passed away, and
Yeah.
optimal. I think to your point, yeah, your experiences, those unknown factors of how certain past events have affected you, also makes the grieving different to each person as far as what would actually be optimal for them to get to where they need to be. Like it basically, you cannot just do a copy paste solution in no way, because again, yeah, someone who's never dealt with death, for someone who's just had a lot of death, the person who's dealt with a lot of death might just be like so like lost to it. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? Or again, there could be just multiple responses basically, and then how they would optimally deal with it would be very
Yeah.
different. So, in a way, I think we kind of answered that question.
I feel like grief is such a palpable thing.
I agree too.
Shit. Like when you actually sit down and like
It's
think
very
about what grief is and what it does to a person or a
yeah.
group of people, it's messed up. And it's weird because
But it's messed up, but it's also bonding. Like it's weird that I have also fond memories of connecting.
watching people grieve.
No, I have fond memories of connecting with people and family
Yeah.
in a time of grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
it was a time of sadness,
Yeah.
but there was good memories of just knowing, like, if when things go wrong, you have that community.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of comfort that also comes with that, which not everyone gets to have, unfortunately, which that's what sucks. But
Here's the cynicism I feel with those moments though.
mm-hmm.
Especially like I'm thinking more specifically about funerals.
Yeah,
It feels sort of manufactured because the people that show up to the funeral
yeah,
grieve for you for that day or for that week, and then they go back to their lives, but you're stuck, like if you're the family, you're stuck in that state of grief for months and sometimes years. And so that's why I'm like, yeah, I've had some moments of like connecting with people
mm-hmm.
during the grief, but I also understand that what they're going through, that grief, I'm not feeling that. So I take the good part of the benefits of grieving, right? But I don't actually pay the cost of it because it affects your day to day life. It affects the ability to go to work or connect with your friends or your kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, am I being cynical, or do you think what I said is like there's some level of truth to it?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna apologize because I caught the back end of it.
Sure, I can say
Because
it
I was
again.
also I was thinking about how I do need to go soon.
Okay.
So I wanted to like wrap this up just for this episode, and then like we
Sure.
revisit this on another day.
Sure.
But yeah, go back to the cynicism. I want to go through this stuff first.
Basically, to roll it up, I do think because you're talking about how moments of grief
Yeah.
allow you to bond with
Yeah,
people.
okay.
And my counter is that you're just taking the positives of that grief for the day, right? Because when the grief-stricken thing happens,
It sits with you
um,
for a long time.
the people who are truly affected
Yeah.
by it have to overcome it over
Oh, of
months,
course. Yeah.
whereas your connection is a connection over a day or a week
Yeah.
because you don't live the lives that they live.
Yeah.
And there are exceptions to this where people will actually keep checking in and keep making sure you're good and actually jump in and
Yeah.
like cook for you and stuff for months on
Yeah.
end. But that's the exception, I think.
And even then, it can be even just annoying because sometimes people just want to be alone, right? Like sometimes people are like, no, I don't even want that
Yeah.
extra support. Like I get it, but like right now, I just need to be alone with my thoughts, or I just need to be alone with my feelings and just like get over this, or just deal with it. Because like you were saying though, at the end of the day, no matter how connected these people are with you and how much they're around you, so I'm in a way, I guess I'm agreeing with you. The cynicism is valid. Where at the end of the day, no matter how many people are there around you, and the bonding that you feel, the moments alone when you're dealing with your pain, um, can't be replaced, I guess, or are they just yeah, that sucks. Like it's just I don't know
It
how to
just,
explain.
it
Yeah,
just, it just
no, because like I think you're making a fair point, right? Like you think about the one like you said the day or the other day where, oh yeah, you were at the viewing and yeah, there was all this family that showed up and you connected with people and they were there for you and you felt that love and support. Okay, cool. But then that night when you were home alone, right? Or that next week when you were found alone, right? Like, what? How are those memories? Um, I think though that there's still value though,
yeah.
right? In
I'm
those
not
moments of
disputing that.
still feeling the true
Yeah.
love and support, but
Yeah.
it definitely is still a major struggle, a uphill mountain to climb to get yourself out of
Yeah.
those grief-stricken
And,
moments.
so we'll just stop it there because I feel like I could still go into so many different things.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we'll
you
pause
and me, we
there.
can literally talk for hours. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
But the other part, so that's fade out.